We are learning Moed Katan Daf Tez Zayin. We left off on Daf Tez Zayin, Amud Aleph, 4 lines from the top of the Amud, Amar Rava. As we mentioned, as we went through, look at the Hemshach Hadvarim. We began learning about Chol HaMoed. We made the correlation between Chol HaMoed and Avelus, one being the opposite of the other. Then we spoke out that many detailed laws regarding an Avel have to also be practiced by someone who was put into a Nidui. Today's daf, as we will also go into the same topic a bit tomorrow, is speaking about this type of nidui, excommunication ban that is made by Beis Din. Now let's appreciate that there is a limited amount of power that Beis Din has. Nowadays, Beis Din has even less power. If the Dayanim are great role models, then they should have influence, which perhaps in the long run is even greater than power, but there is very little power that they have. So we're going to learn a little bit today that if someone will defy Beis Din on different levels, they could take away your financial possessions and bequeath it to someone else. That's called the power of Hefker, Beis Din Hefker. But there is also the koyach of Beis Din to put someone in a ban. Now there are 3 words that are used when it comes to such a ban. There are different ways of interpreting those words. We're going to take the approach that Shamta is the generic word, which includes all different types of bans. And then when we start to go into the specifics, there is a Nidui and there is a Chedem. Nidui being less severe, Chedem being more severe. The details of the severity is not something that we will learn about today. We did learn on Daf Tezvav Abraisa, if you remember, Amar Rabbi Yosef, he spoke about Menuda, a Muchram. There are other details as well, but at least let's get that concept that there is a initial Nidui ban that Beis Din could impose upon someone. We'll see why they will impose it. And then if the person doesn't rectify whatever needs to be rectified, after 2 periods of the Nidui ban, and each period goes for 30 days, then the Beis Din will bring about this higher, this more severe type of ban known as a Chedem. We will also learn that when it comes to Nidui itself, sometimes they do it when a person B'chlal does not show up to court. They can put someone in a Nidui ban if they don't follow through with the ruling of the Beis Din. Again, there's 2 types of not following through. There's a person who was found owing money in Beis Din. All right, I'm liable to pay X amount of money. There's a person that tells Beis Din, okay, theoretically, I'm a Kabul, I don't have the money. They're not going to put a person in a Nidui if indeed the person doesn't have money, which is something a little bit difficult to measure. But anyways, if a person tells the Beis Din, I am not listening to you, normally that is where the person will be put into a Nidui. And then you have another cause for a person to be put into a Nidui ban, and if this person will be very disrespectful to Talmidei Chachamim. However that's defined. Just got to become aware of the words. A person who's mevaze Talmidei Chachamim will be put into a nidui, and there are different levels of disrespecting the Talmud Chacham. There are slighting the honor. These are just the words, less severe. There is something called afkei rusa. Afkei rusa means someone who shows contempt, which is something that's considered more severe. And then we're going to speak about something that's called a nezifa, which is called a rebuke. That Beis Din doesn't actually ban someone, and there was a procedure how they did it and an announcement that was made, but they rebuked someone, and when the recipient of the rebuke should behave in a certain humble way during that period. We'll see how long will that period go on. We're going to learn a little bit about the power of a tzaddik, and it's going to be a loaded daf. Let's just start. Let's get into the whole sugya of Nidui, Shamta, Chedem, Amar Rava. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shahar kol nehim v'dvarei. All right, so step number 1. We're speaking about the procedure of calling someone to Beis Din. This is all in the context, because when will someone be put into this Nidui ban if they defy the Beis Din while they're being summoned to court? So therefore we have to speak about how is someone summoned to court, which is fascinating. So first of all, minalan de mishadrinan shlicha de beidina. How do we know that we send a shliach from Beis Din to the person who's being called to court, to the defendant, and he's invited to come to court. This is called a hazmana. Now, the question is, why isn't it obligatory for the judge or for the judges themselves to go to the defendant? How do we know that they are allowed to only send a shliach? That's the way we're understanding Rava. And the Chsiv, because we find in Parshas Koirach that there was, so to say, a problem that Koirach had with Moshe Rabbeinu, and actually his claimant was against Moshe and against God. His taina was against Aharon. There are many people involved over here. We also will view Hashem and Moshe as the judges. We're going to view the defendant as Aaron and the claimant as Koirach. Now, who else got involved? Dasan and Aviram. So it says that Vayishlach Moshe likrei ledasan ulaviram. That when Moshe, representing the Beis Din, went to call Dasan and Aviram, who went to call him? Not Moshe Rabbeinu himself, but he sent a shliach. You know who he sent? Just to know the story. Koirach was the shliach. How ironic. Doesn't matter. The fact that Dasan and Aviram that were being summoned were not summoned directly by the judge, by Moshe, not summoned directly by God, who was also the judge, is a proof that Beis Din could only send a shliach to summon someone. I want you to know that nowadays, a shliach, there's so many laws of shluchim, who could be a shliach, who cannot be a shliach, right? Ein shlichus la'akum. The way a hazmana is done nowadays is via email. There's many tshuvas about it, not about email, about mail. No, this is the source. You don't have to personally be machabed the person. The person has to be notified. Okay. B'nei Eliyav. I'm sorry. Okay. Question number 2. How do you know that he has to go to the Beis Din? You know, what's question number 2? Why don't we demand for Beis Din to go to him, aside of the summons? You understand? If Reuven has a claim against Shimon, maybe Shimon can say, you want me to come to Beis Din? My house. No, the claimant has to go to Beis Din, as it says, that Ato, here Koirach was already part of the litigants. Now the Gemara has to, just a continuation is, Heyu lifnei Hashem machar. They needed to go to Beis Din. Another question, how do you know that if there is in the court a unique dayan, which is not always the case, but if there is a unique dayan, that means there's a judge in this court that's a master, that's an expert, that when the person is being summoned, you don't only say you're being summoned to go to Beis Din, you're being summoned to appear in front of that dayan. He becomes the name of the Beis Din. How do you know? That's the question mark. That if there is a Gavra Rabba, his name should be mentioned. Guys, there are so many different ways of learning this Gemara. We're taking one approach over here because it says Lifnei Hashem, like we mentioned, that here there was Moshe also, but here the Mamash, God was the master judge and he was being evoked. Planya. How do you know that atu planya? Atu planya means chevra, omri. When you call someone to court, do you have to let the defendant know who the claimant is? Including in that, does the claimant have to be aware regarding what? That's this Gemara. Maybe you would think that if Reuven has a claim against me, Beis Din tells me to come to court. Why do I need to know before what to lawyer up? If it's all about the emes, let me just go to court. No. I have to be notified who's being called to court. The moment I know who the other side is, that also includes I'll know something about the case, because it says, Ato v'heim v'aharon. No, it's Aaron. Now in that case, Mistama, they knew it was about Aaron. It's not the point. The point is that someone is summoned. Many laws we're learning. I know it's late. This is a very important Gemara. You can do it through a shliach. Beis Din doesn't have to go. The person has to go to the Beis Din. Now, in many details, which Beis Din can the person go to? Can the person say, I'm going to go to court, not to your court? Yes. But they have to respond to the summons. They have to be notified who the claimant is. Another din. The kavi'in on zimna. How do you know that you set a time? And not what? How do you know that you cannot demand of the person to come immediately? You cannot do that. You have to set a time because it says machar. Next question. If a person does not show up once, you know what? The person has to be given another chance prior to the Beis Din now reacting by using one of the tools at their disposal, which is the tool we're speaking about, which is banning the person, putting a chedim, putting a nidui, the lower level of ban. Zimna, basar zimna. Right, look inside the Rashi, the last Rashi on top of the Amid, 4 lines from the top, the Eloi Asiyahu Zimna, that if the claimant doesn't come the first time, that Kave'in on Zimna Achrita. So this is a pasuk regarding a nevuah of Yirmiyahu. This is many years after the story that we read in the Chumash about Parai. But ultimately, Egypt fell again in the hands of Bavel. And what happened over there is that they were called to the battlefield. Once, he didn't show up. The Parai and his army, they called him again to the battlefield. He didn't show up again. And the people in Egypt, they put him into Azan Nidui. We're not learning halachas from that. We're learning this concept that not showing up once is not enough to ban someone. You have to do it twice. That it says karu sham. The word sham literally means there. We're learning the Rasha. We're learning Gemara. Here, the word sham means shamta. And like we mentioned, the generic word for ban is chedim. Karu sham. Why did they evoke a ban? Because regarding Parai Melech Mitzrayim Sha'oin, this is some sort of derogatory statement regarding that Parai, that Hever HaMoyed. Hever HaMoyed, Rashi means that he missed the appointed time once and he missed it again. So that's the source, that twice. Now, I want you to know that we're not learning Shulchan Aruch now. I just want people to know that right nowadays you give a person 3 hazmanas. But here, the way we are learning the Gemara, you call a person once, you have to give a date. If they don't show up, now by the way, when you get the first date, you can right away challenge the first date. But once you establish the date, then you're called again. If you miss the date once, you're given another chance. And if you don't come the second time, just for not showing up, you're going to be put into a nidui. Now another detail, it's common that people shoot the messenger. That's why in English they say, don't shoot the messenger. So what happens if the person that's being called reacts not towards the claimant, not towards the Beis Din, but they speak negatively towards the shliach? They react in a non-positive way. So normally we are bound by the laws of Lashon Hara, not over here. Here there's a toyelis. It's important for the Beis Din to know how he reacted. So how do we know the imispaker shlicha the beidina? That if he vilified even only the shliach, certainly if he vilified the Beis Din, we're speaking about the verbal disregard. V'asa v'amar. And the shliach Beis Din tells the Beis Din, this is what the guy said. So how do we know? It's not a problem with speaking. Normally we're not allowed to speak Lashon Hara. By the way, Lashon Hara means saying the truth. It doesn't help just because it's the truth. That's no heter. But this is an exception, that the Shliach Beis Din has to inform Beis Din how he reacted, because, if they think he's coming and he doesn't come, they have to know what's going on. If he vilified them, you can already know that this guy ain't coming that quick. You have to know, you have to get more information, because it says that doesn't...
There's like a negative slant to the Beis Din already about this claimant or this individual.
I missed the question, Danny.
I'm saying if we can tell the Beis Din the negative way that they reacted to him, that's already slanting them in a certain way. How does Mr. Judge fairly?
Let me ask you a question, Danny. Today in a court, in a Goyish court, lahavdul, if a defendant gets up there and curses out the judge, does a judge recuse himself?
No. Okay.
But why? Maybe because he's used to it. Every single defendant is cursing out the judge.
Right, but he wouldn't come in before the court case and say, I heard that you said such and such about the judge.
Okay. Danny's picking up a good point. I would say that if a judge feels that if the judge reacts negatively, emotionally, towards the vilification of either party, he might have to recuse himself. Yeah? But we're not learning the Hilchos judges, we're learning about the procedure. We're not even learning all the details, but we're going through the procedure of summoning someone to court. That will be one of the main reasons to put someone in a nidui. And what happened? The Dustin Ravinim says that even if our eyes will be gouged out, we're not coming to you. Now, that's a very disrespectful way of what Moshe Rabbeinu was going to gouge someone's eyes out. How did Moshe Rabbeinu know they said those words? Now the truth is, Moshe Rabbeinu was a Navi, but we're going with the presumption that Moshe Rabbeinu was notified by Kairach or by other people that this was the reaction of the defendants, which is an ayah that you should notify the judges how they reacted. And now, Uminolan the Mishamtinan. Minolan the Mishamtinan means that if they don't heed the summons, right? Shamta again. Shamta is this generic word that they put into the Nidui ban initially. Dichsiv. Now, we already learned a little bit yesterday when we learned Nidui together with Avelos. We're not going to go through the halachas. How should someone behave when they are in a ban? Now, you should know there's just one detail. There is the effect that it has on the person placed in the ban. And Nidui also affects halachas for the people around him. So people cannot interact with him. That's not only a halach on the one who is banned, that's also some sort of imposition on the people around him. And that's part of a curse, when you disconnect a person from the klal. And it's as it says, that this is a pasuk in reference to the war, and Barak and the Voida asked from Meirois. We'll see soon whether it was a general, whether it was some ruchniistic power. They asked Meirois to help. Meirois didn't come to the summons, he ignored the summons, so they reacted by cursing him. And this curse is part of the Nidui. Oiru Meirois, may Meirois be cursed. That's where you see that if you don't listen to summons, you deserve. Now, does Beis Din always have to ban you? Not always, but they have that ability. The hachis for the high gavra, that you have to inform the person who's being banned, just like when you call him to court. You don't just say Beis Din is calling you. If there is a Gavra Rabba, you say, Rabbi, the big Rav is calling you. When the ban is put, you inform him who banned you. You inform, how do you know the Hachas Farah, the Gavra Rabba? You notify the person, the great man who put you in a ban, as it says regarding Meirois, that Amar Malach Hashem. Malach Hashem said to curse Meirois. Uminolan, how do we know? And again, we're going through in between the lines, that after a person is put into this lower ban, 30 days, and he still is ignoring the summons, then there's another 30 days. Big machlokes, do they have to put it on him again? Or does it happen automatically? But after 2 periods of nidui, if he didn't do tshuva, then you make a more severe ban called chedem. If you want to remember some details, look exactly one daf ago, between the nidui and chedem. The machraminon, because it says oiru or roir, a double expression. So there are 2 levels to this curse. Now, next question: the achel v'shasi badei v'koi ba'arba amas didei. How do you know that this ban, like we mentioned, isn't only on the person who's being put in the ban, but there's also halachis that are being placed on those around him? I need to know that I can't eat with so and so, or that I cannot sit even in his 4 cubits. How do I know that? Because it says, again, by Meirois, Yoishveha, that this curse was also, there is a certain halacha that goes on those who live near Meirois. Another thing, Uminolan, how do we know the partin and chetibit that in public we notify the people what this person did, which is why he was put in a ban? I want you to know, my friends, that we have this all the way up until Shulchan Aruch. That when there was a financial litigation between 2 people, once one party was found, you owe the money. If he didn't pay up, one of the public places where they would announce would be right before Baruch Hu. How funny is that? In Shul, in Shachris, not to make a hefsek, but after Yishtabach, that's where there's the least problem of interrupting with bang, because you don't do it before Hoidu, not enough people come on time. By Baruch Hu, everyone is in Shul. They're announced, Chaim Yankel owes money and he's not paying. Baruch Hu es Hashem HaMavayda. All right. How do you know that you specify your sins in public? Because when they cursed Meirois, Kilebo le'ezras Hashem. And V'amar Ula says that how did they put Meirois into a ban? They did it by blowing 400 shofars. Bedalid meya shipurei shamte barak lemeirois. Can you imagine? In other words, so first of all, you see that it's done in public. When you blow 400 shofars, wow! And they specified there also exactly what he did. Ikeda Amri, that who was Meirois? Either he was a Gavra Rabbi, he was a general. So he was expected by Devoid and Barak to come to aid. And it wasn't just him. If a general comes, he would come, NATO, he would come with all the troops. Amazing. They asked Ruchni is the neshama of that star, of a certain star called Meirois. They were evoking the constellations to come be of help. Where do we find that? We find that by Yeshua, right? That Shemesh begivoin doim. The sun stopped. There are times that the constellations came to the aid of the Jewish people. And to a certain degree, that is what happened in this war. If you remember, we learned this already together in the Gemara. Remember the waters, they got very hot and they put their spears in, got very cold. It was like, how the sea by Kriyas Yamsuf was upset that they needed to give out the Egyptians. They wanted to eat it. God says, I'll give you back. And that's when the armies got drowned over there. But they wanted also to evoke Merois. It says, another din. Aside of them having the power to ban someone, don't forget the koyach of a ban is also dependent. Is it effective? If people will listen to the ban. If a Beis Din puts Chaim in a ban and no one disassociates, won't be effective. There's another power that they have, that they can declare his belongings hefker. And really, and here we have this many times in Chazal. One of the two psukim is going to be quoted over here, as it says that this is when the Jewish people came back Bisman by Yesheni, and during the few 70 years of Golus, there were many Jews, God forbid, Rahman al-Islam, that intermarried, and they were being told to leave their Goyish families behind, which was a big nesoyin. And if because come back without your non-Jewish wives, so they declared Yochanan Kol Rechushay, all of his belongings will be chayda, means it will become ownerless, and V'hu Yibadal Nikal HaGoylan, he will be put into a ban. So they already foretold, they warned that they're going to use both of these instruments. Uminolan, how do we know? That Beis Din also has the right, did not say none, to fight with someone, however that means, to contend, to confront. And they have the right vilatinan to curse, and they have the right to machinan to strike, to hit, and they have the right vitolshinan seir to pull out one's hair. For that you have to have hair. Umash be'inan, and they can make someone take an oath. They have, in other words, these. That's it. This is all of the bullets of a Beis Din. They don't have more than that. Actually, we're going to learn soon that they might have the power to put someone in jail. How do we know that they can do that? That va'arev imam, this is all concerning the same event. This is about Yirmiyahu, this is a pasuk of Yirmiyahu, for telling about those, again, about those who got intermarried. That I will fight with them, va'kalalem, and I'm going to curse them, va'akamem, I'm going to hit them, anoshim, ve'em retem, and I'm going to tear out the hair, and vashbiyam, and I'm going to adjure them. Furthermore, minalan, how do we know the chavsinon, that we can tie up their hands and their feet? This is before you flog someone. And ve'osrin, and you can imprison them, and you can make hardafa. Okay, now we went through all the bullets. And you can do hardafa. Hardafa we'll see as the ban. Beis Din has that right, because it says, hey, some of them will be sentenced to death. Ve'heim lishoy rashi will be uprooted. Ve'heim la'ana, some of them will be punished. Nachsen, their belongings, or lesuram, and imprisoned. What's lishoy rashi? What's the mean that some of them will be uprooted? Amar Adam Mari, Amar Abchem Bar Baruch, Amar Abchia Bar Aven, Amar Rav Yehuda. It means hardafa, which is a little bit problematic. All right. So why does that? Oh no, that's it. Shirashi means hardafa. And what's hardafa? Amar Rav Yehuda Bereid Rav Shmuel Bar Shelos, in the name of Rav. Hardafa means menadan la'alter. He's put into a ban. Now, guys, we had before that the person is summoned. Remember, and they even have the right, so to say, to miss one appointment. So the many people hold that. He argues with that. That if they miss the first appointment, right away you put them into a nidui. Vishoinin la'achar lamed, and if the person doesn't come to court, they renew it. They renew it after 30 days. And umacharimim la'achar shishim. Amar Rav Yehuda Bereid Rav Chinana. This is what Rav Chizda said. That masrin bei sheni. Beis Din would sit Mondays and Thursdays. So what happened was that he was told, come to the closest date. Let's say there was an issue Sunday, come tomorrow. If he would not come Monday, they would right away put him into a nidui. But they wouldn't give him 30 days. Then they would say, come on Thursday. On Thursday, they would make the second nidui. Yeah, 2 niduis, then a chedim. But it wasn't 30, and all those time. And then the next Monday, they already would put the guy into a chedim. A much shorter period of time, you would go from being good to go to be put all the way in the chedim. Now, Hanamili, that you don't go right away to a chedim, Or hanamili, that you wait, if you summon someone to court, that you wait a certain amount of time according to what we learned above, and then you give the guy another chance. All of that is if the din Torah was regarding financial, limamoina, aval le'afkirusa, that's key. Afkirusa, the words in Rashi is mevazei talmidei chachamim. If the person is showing a high level of contempt towards the talmidei chachamim, then la'alter, they right away put him into a chedem. The Gemara is not defining what that means, but that's connected to the fact that you don't have to, there's no lashon hara. In other words, if the guy spoke in a very derogatory way, that alone will justify the person being put into a chedem. And here we go, a few stories. Ahuta Bachar,
We know the difference between a chedem and a rebbe.
So ayin b'daf tezvav, the Gemara spoke many details, Danny. We learned in yesterday's tezvav amadal. There are more, but that will say a person who's an idui can still teach, can still learn. He can do business, he can work. Even though people cannot eat with him, there's a certain separation, but they're still allowed a certain amount of interaction. Chedem is a much higher level of disassociation. There was a tabacha. There was a butcher, the Ispaker Rav Tuvi Bar Masna, that he showed contempt to Rav Tuvi Bar Masna. And now, guys, just because we said that if a person shows contempt to Talmidei Chachamim, you can put him into a ban, you have to first have some sort of investigation. Did he indeed show contempt? Like, how do you know? So there is a certain amount of investigation. So Imnu Alei Rav Tuvi asked, he appointed Abaye and Rava to find out if indeed whatever they said that he did, and he did. And visham tuhu, again this generic word, he put him into a chedem. Lasoif azal paisei lebaldinei. So this tabacha, this butcher went and he apologized. I mean, if the problem is, let's say, financial, the solution is paying up. If the problem is that you were very disrespectful towards the dayan, so the solution was to, you apologized. Amar Abaye, so now Abaye wanted to know, hey Chaliyavid, what should we do? Lishrei, should we right away take him out of his ban? No, lechal shamta lei tulasan yamin. That means he won't even stay in this banned state for 30 days. And a guy has to be in a ban at least for 30 days. Okay, so no problem. So leave him in a shamta for 30 days. There was a problem here. The way people learned the Gemara. The problem is that the Beis Din then put him into the ban. Some of those dayanim were planning to travel. And there are some who hold that the same rabbanim, dayanim, who put someone in a shamta, they are the ones that have to release. They have to be there. So let's wait until 30 days. Loy lishrelei, not to do it right away, not to take him out. No, kabayir rabbanan lemeyal. Some of the chevra want to travel, and this guy will never be stuck. Amalei Ravidi bar Avin, midi shemi Allah baha. Did you know? Did you hear what we should do over here? Amalei hachi amar avtavchlifa bar Avdimi amar Shmuel, that I don't agree that there has to be a 30-day minimum. There's no minimum. You do tshuva, you're right away out of it. Tut. What does tut mean? Tut means the sound of the shofar. In other words, we just said before, the way they would publicize, they would blow the shofar. So the same blowing of the shofar, asar, right away, tut shari. Blow the shofar and notify everyone he's out of the ban. We took away the ban. Amalei, no. Hanamili, that you are allowed to take the person out of the ban right away. You don't need to wait 30 days. That's only if he was put into the ban because of mamaina. Aval, if he was put into a ban la'af kirusa, which was the case over here, if a person showed contempt, however you define that, no, adachai l'shamta leit l'as yoymin. Okay, now nakuda. Now, what do we see from over here? Says the Gemara Alma. We see that Abaye holds hani beit l'asa d'shamitu. If 3 dayanim put someone into a shamta, lo yasu t'las achrin v'shadalei. You can't have other 3. That's why there was a whole problem here, because some of the dayanim here were traveling. So this guy never was stuck because they ruled you can't release him. When was he released? The Gemara doesn't say. Maybe he's still waiting. The Chachamim have to come back. I don't know. Okay, now the Bayalahu was asked in the yeshiva. Hanu beit talasa d'shamitu. If 3 people put someone in a ban, Ma'u lemeisei talasa achrin v'shadalei. Can 3 others come and take it out? Tashema, it says in a brayse like this, that if someone is menuda l'rav is not showing contempt. Just to know, there's different levels. Menuda l'rav is someone who was slighted the rav. So he was put into a nidui. So the din is menuda l'talmud. If you were put into a nidui towards someone greater, then you are automatically a nidui. All the people around the rav who are lower than the rav they also have to keep you away. If you were only menuda l'talmid, ain't a menuda l'rav. Similarly, if a person was menuda li'iroi, we're speaking about a larger city, so then a smaller city for sure is also included. Menuda li'iracheres. That's the way Acheres is not about, it's about numbers. If you were put into a Chedim in a smaller congregation of people, then you're not automatically in a need for a larger congregation of people. There's different levels of bands. If a person was put into a lesser ban, it doesn't evoke a larger ban. Menuda l'nasi, menuda l'chol Yisrael. Menuda l'chol Yisrael, ein menuda l'nasi. So far we didn't touch on this topic, but in this brayse it says, Rashba goimer, echad min ha-talmidim. Shenid of a maze, if some of the talmidim, they made up the Beis Din. So you have the Av Beis Din and you have two student judges. And this person was involved and he passed away. See, the word is talmidim. So you would think the Av Beis Din is there, he can remove it. He cannot. Even if the minor dayan is not present, chelkoi eina mufar. Interesting expression. It means it's not that it's completely not revoked, but some of it is still there. So now, well, there are solutions to that in Shulchan Aruch. Today, I think it says that you take a minyan and you go to the kever of that person, and you notify, you bet mechila over there and something like that. There's something to do. Shma mino tlas. Shma mino talmud shenidui l'chvoidoi nidui. Because this brayso is not speaking about someone who showed contempt to the Torah. If someone would show contempt to the Torah, then it would never be menuda l'talmud. It must be someone showed the contempt, he was disrespectful to the Talmud. That's also a justification to put the person in this nidui type of ban. V'shma mino kol echad le'echad mefer chelkoi. Clearly, everyone has to be present to remove his part of the ban. And now, v'shma mino, now this third one can be debated. V'shma mino, that hani beit telasa d'shamito, that if three dayanim put someone in a ban, lo yasu telasa achrita v'shanol, you can't have another base replacing them. What the solution is, Shuki the Gemara will say in a moment. However, a Meimar who doesn't, a Meimar is not arguing with the Rashbag, but he's arguing with the third Shma Mino. A Meimar holds Hilchase, that Hani Beit Telasa de Shamitu, if three people put someone in a ban, also Beit Telasa Achrini Visharole, yes, other three can remove. No, but didn't we learn and my love it can never be removed? Right? No, so he says no. This is what it means. It's gavaldik. If one dayan was part of banning someone and that dayan is not there, you need to have now three dayanim taking his place. So I take back what I said to go to the burial place. That's a mystical thing. That works.
First two have
to be there, and now another three. That's what it means. No, in the place of this one v'sharolei. Okay, let's invite it. Tana Rabbanan. If a person is put into a nidui, the default is 30 days. Now I know we just had this topic, and we just understood from our story above that really, if you're put into a nidui because you were mavazat Talmidei Chachamim, only 30 days. If it's from a moina and you fixed it, fine, we're not arguing with that. But the general nidui is for 30 days. But there's something else called nizifa. Nizifa doesn't mean that they blew the shofars and Beis Din says you are in a nidui or you're in a shamta. Nizifa means that if we interact with the tzaddik and we are rebuked by the tzaddik, if a tzaddik gets upset with me, I have to behave humbly, and there are certain dinim. I have to a certain degree, be a little bit disassociated from the chevra, to have some sort of isolation, imposed, self-imposed. For how long? 7 days. More detail soon. We'll see that in Bavel, when we interact with tzaddikim, it's going to happen the whole time. Just giving you a heads up. The only way to avoid the nazifa is to be disconnected. So be connected, and stuff happens, and we'll be humbled. Okay. So Nazifa from Eretz Yisrael was 7 days. That says in the end of Parshas Ba'aloischa that when Miriam, or at least the Torah records that Miriam was punished. The truth is Aaron was also punished, but the Torah doesn't speak about it. So Moshe Rabbeinu davened for her, and God Almighty told Moshe Rabbeinu that imagine if a father if a father would spit in the face of someone, there should be at least a certain amount of humiliation that should last for 7 days. So bottom line is that Miriam, right, was in a state of excommunication for the 7 days. So that's a zecher that God rebuked Miriam, even though God forgave her, God healed her, but she remained in the state for 7 days. Amar Rab Chizda says, Rab Chizda, Nidoi Shelanu, when in Bavel, if they put someone in a ban, How long should the ban last? Not 30 days, only 7 days. It's like the Nazif of Bnei Eretz Yisrael. That was a big acknowledgement that there's more godliness in Israel. There's this, b'machshakim hoishivani means that the Torah of Bavel we consider greater, dafka, because we are in a darker place. So therefore we have to analyze it more. But if someone is rebuked in Eretz Yisrael, everything is down a notch in Bavel. So if Nidui is 30 days, Nazif is 7 days, so he says a Nidui in Bavel is for 7 days. Now guys, what about a Nazif in Bavel? We'll see that on Moed base. We just have to get there. Nazifa, they do Shiva. What, you're telling me that if someone is put in a Nazifa in the Holy Land, they only self-impose a certain amount of separation and they live more humbly, however that means, for 7 days only? Stories. V'suloi, story number 1. V'ha Rab Shimon bar Rebbe. Ubar Kapara. They were Yosvi v'Kagarsi. They were learning together. And while they were learning, Kashilu Shmaitza. The Gemara wants to show you how easy it is to receive a rebuke. So 2 Talmidim are learning. One of them was the son of Rebbe, the son of Rabbeinu HaKadosh. And Amalei Rab Shimon is the son of Rebbe. To Bar Kapara, when they weren't hopping. So you know what Rab Shimon says? He says that Dover Zet Tzarech Rebbe. For this, it wasn't just because he was his father. No, his father was Rabbeinu HaKadosh. For this we need Rebbe. Implying that if Rebbe would be there, Rebbe would resolve it. It was such a big question that Bar Kapara told Rab Shimon, even Rebbe can't help us. That's how good our question is. He told him, what can Rebbe add? Now that was a disrespect because he was basically saying that the Rebbe won't have the answer. And Azal Amalei Lavua. Ikpat, Rebbe took it to heart. So also Bar Kapara at some point Bar Kapara went to see Rebbe. Amalei, Rebbe tells Bar Kapara, Eini Makircha Ma'olam. I don't know who you are. I want to tell you stories my father told me in the earlier years. Say that the Rabbi Hecht in one of the surrounding cities of New York had a big school and something happened and he fired all the teachers. He came to New York, the Rebbe ignored him. The Rebbe told Chadikov, I don't know who he is. Who is he? So my father told him, hire them back and fire them slowly. And they did that. But anyway, he's coming back over here. So Yada, so when he heard he doesn't recognize him, Yada the Nekat Milsa Vedate. So he knew that the Rebbe took it to heart. Okay, once you know that Tzaddik is upset at you, is Nahag Nizifusa Benafshi Tulasan Yoimen. He behaved, again, however that means, there's a certain amount of, halachically, you minimize the interaction with people. You self-isolate. You only use Zoom, but not in person. For you get the kasha, 30 days, not 1 week. Another story. Shuf anachamaisa. We have to finish. Shuf amachas. Gaza Rebbe once made a dakana shelo yishnu talmidim bashuk, that Torah should not be learned out in the public. We had this before Chavre. We had this topic in Sukkah. It's a very deep mystical concept. On one hand, you can argue there's nothing greater than learning Torah in public. There was a whole machloikas. Rebbe opined Torah should not be learned in the public. It's disrespectful. There's a certain amount of emo. We learned this just a few days ago. You have to learn Torah, be'emo, be'yira, be'eses, u'bezeya. Don't learn it in the public place. Okay, Madarash, and where did he take it from? Because in Shir HaShirim, King Solomon says, Chamuke yerkayich, that your hidden thighs are beautiful like jewels. Oh, so why did he use the word thighs? Ma yerech, just like a thigh by default. Before America invented whatever the way people dress today, before Yerech, a thigh is always covered, Daf Yud, Tezayin Omid based on the top. So Rebbe extrapolated, Divrei Torah, there has to be a certain amount of seiser. You understand? Now, Chavra, we're not going to go into right now. Right now, the Rebbe holds you learn Chutzah. At that time, Rebbe wanted Torah to be learned in private. Rab Chia disagreed with that, but he did it in public. Now Rab Chia, Yotza Rab Chia v'shana l'shnei b'nei Echov. Rab Chia had 2 nephews. Who were his nephews? We know Rav was one of them. And he taught them Torah in the marketplace. Tarav bar Chana. There was a machlekes already then. Shama Rebbe, Ikbat. Okay, he got upset. Also, Rab Chia lis chazuyelei. Again, sooner or later, Rab Chia needed to come to speak to Rebbe. And Rebbe, first of all, I'm just telling you, I'm the messenger. You have to know what that means. Chia had a hard time saying ches. Rebbe, when he was upset at Chia, instead of calling him Chia, called him Iya. Iya, who is anyone calling you outside? In other words, get out. Someone is calling you out there. Wow. Yada the nekat milsa bedate. Oh, Rebbe took it to heart. So what did he do? Nahag nizifusa benafshi tlosin yoimen. And now we're not done with the story. So on the 30th day, Rebbe now felt 30 days is enough. He called him. Then Rebbe decided, I got to wait another day. And we have this concept, if you remember, in many areas of halacha, we say, Miksas hayom kekula. We learned this together in Rosh Hashanah and many other times. When it comes to mourning, we say, Miksas hayom kekula. So Rebbe knew that there has to be 30-day nizifa, as did Rab Chia. So in the beginning, Rebbe thought that the beginning of the 30th day is enough, and he called him. Rebbe also wanted to interact with him. Then Rebbe sent another shliach, and he says, no, don't come. So but then, so the Gemara interrupts the story and the Gemara asks, hold on, what's the back and forth? The Gemara clarifies. In the beginning, Rebbe thought that we applied the rule Miksas Kukuloi in regard to a Nidui. Later, Rebbe himself changed his mind and he says that we don't say Miksas Kukuloi. Now there's no time, there's a lot to understand. Taka, when do we say it? When we don't say it. Bottom line is, Rab Chia never got the second message not to come. Not that he ignored it. He never got it. He got the message to come. He came on that. He came on that day. And Rebbe was about to get upset again. Oh my God. Rebbe tells him, Amai Oseis, why did you come? So Rab Chia says, why did I come? You sent for me. Amalei, tishlach li mar deleisei. No, but the Rebbe says, V'hashalachi loch deloitesi. But then I sent another messenger, you should not come. So for that Rab Chia says, Zer ra'isi v'zel lo ra'isi. He told him the emes, I never got the second message. Rebbe took that as a hashgacha pratis, that even though the 30 days are not up, but God is showing him favor. So he says, he quoted the pasuk in Mishlei that when you see that God is favoring man's ways, then gam oivav yishalem ito, even his enemy should make peace with him. Yeah. It's a very important rule. When you see someone successful, God is with him. So imagine. So Rebbe says, really, I was going to keep you away another day, but now that I see that God, how was God with him? By hashgacha pratis, that he never got the second message. But here, all of this is a kasha. In that 1 second, before we go into the, stand the kasha, 30 days, two stories. We said on Amud Aleph that the Nizif is only 7 days. The Rebbe never put anyone in a ban. When a Talmud felt that the Rebbe was upset at them, they took upon themselves this humbled behavior of being away, including from the Rebbe. Now, my tamam ovid marhachi. First of all, Rebbe asked him, why did you teach Torah in public? Amalei dechsiv, because it says, fakert, you quote a pasuk in Mishlei. It says, chachmois bachutz Torah. You should sing wisdom in the streets. What wisdom are we talking about? Torah wisdom. Amalei, Rebbe says, oh my God, im karisa. If you read the pasuk only once, then you didn't review it. If you learned it a second time, you didn't learn it a third time. If you learned it a third time, so then you're hopeless, you'll never get it on your own, you needed a better teacher. Loi peir shulach, they never interpreted the pasuk to you, you're not teaching it correctly. Chachmais bachutz taraina, the Gemara is saying, this is now, Rava came many years later. We know what it means, we have it from Rava. The Amar Rava. Rava says like this, that whoever learns Torah mi befnim means on a high level of l'shem shamayim. You know what's going to happen? Torah say machrezes all of mi bachutz. There's something unique that some Yidden, whether they wrote shuvas, whether they wrote svarim on halacha, whether they wrote svarim on gemara, everyone began to use it. And don't think that there are other svarim that are not intellectually just as great. They are. It's about the schus. The Frierdiker Rebbe says that the reason why the Mishnah Berurah became accepted by all the Yidden, because of his Avos Yisrael. There's a ruchnius dika schus that someone has, and everyone all of a sudden begins to quote from his svarim. So from the fact, in other words, when you see, I know we had that by the Pnei Yeshua. I forgot the other svarim that he wrote from one of the Chabad Rabbeim. He said regarding the Pnei Yeshua that it was written when he had a much higher level of ruach. He was more connected versus the other svarim. The other svarim, if you use human mind, they are just as good, but they're not as everyone learns the Pnei Yeshua. That there's certain svarim that it just became accepted. That's what Shlomo Melech means. That there's some high level of the author no one knows about. God knows about it, and it becomes known by the fact that everyone out there is quoting his Chachma. Okay, so that's it. V'haksiv loy meirosh b'seiser dibarti. Did I not speak in secrecy at first? Which means that there is an inyan not to speak in secrecy. That's a kasha. Don't speak in secrecy. That pasuk should indicate that you should learn in public. So the Gemara answers that those who held that Torah should be learned like in a setting, not in the public, is ahu b'yom edekala. When you have a lot of people gathering to learn, you have thousands of people gathering, then there's no problem teaching Torah in the marketplace because there was no room to gather the people. But if you have the option to choose, then having a more private setting, again, that was Shitas Rebbe. Rab Chia argued with that. How did he understand the pasuk Chamuke Yerkayich? That there's that there's something about the Torah being compared to thighs. Does that not mean that it should be hidden? My Ovidley, never about Torah. He held Torah should be learned in public. Do you know what should be done in private? He understood that pasuk is about tzedakah and gemilas chasadim. Min hakatza lakatza. The other side is that no, Torah learn in private, tzedakah give in public. Why give in public? For people to see, and that's going to inspire others. So anyways, that was their machlokes. All of that is leading up to the question. Alma, Nazifa didu tlas and yoimin, not 7 days, answers the Gemara, no. In Eretz Yisrael, if you are rebuked 7 days, but Nazifas Nasi, the head of the Jewish people, there it's for 30 days. Rebbe was the exception. Now, let's continue. If someone is put into a nidui b'chutz la'aretz in the times of the Gemara, 7 days, less time. What about Nazifa? V'Nazifa didan kamahave, answers the Gemara, 1 day. More stories. Ki hadash Shmuel and Marukva, they were two colleagues. Now look at the Hashgacha Pratis. Shmuel was the greater of the two. Marukva was the head of the Beis Din. Okay? Again, every Rosh Yeshiva thinks that he's much greater than all of the Rabbanim. Same dynamic. So there's the head. Who's the head? So ki hava yasi garsi shmaitza. Whenever they were learning together, hava yasi marukva kamei de shmol berichok daladamas. The way you would show reverence to the teacher is that the teacher would be a little bit away from the Talmidim. Marukva, during learning, acknowledged Shmuel is greater. Shmuel was given like the chash of a place. But when they were sitting in judgment, Marukva was the head of the basin. But whenever they were sitting in court, Hava Yosef Shmuel kamei de Marukva b'rich lalamas. Oh, it's a reverence to the position. Marukva, for whatever reason, he was the dayan. Yet, since Marukva knew that Shmuel is greater than him, he wanted to make sure that before he, as the Av Beis, gives a ruling, he wanted to hear every word Shmuel is saying. So in order for him to hear it, they made sure that Shmuel is sitting a little bit higher, Marukva is sitting a little bit lower, so the voice of Shmuel will carry to his ears. But they would carve out a place for Marukva. They didn't want for people to notice that Shmuel was sitting on a higher place. That would be disrespectful. Marukva was the Rosh Av Beis Din. But they carved out a place, you understand? And B'tzifsa means, and they covered it. They covered it. No one saw that a place was carved out. It just made Shmuel's height a little bit taller when they were sitting down. So V'yasiv Ilave, no, it's Marukva was sitting in a cavity. Ki hecha dilishtamon mili, for him always to hear every word of Shmuel. All of this is just proving that they both knew that Shmuel is greater. And therefore, when they would walk together, so the Talmud gives kavod to the Rav also by having the Rav walk a little bit in front of them. And therefore, Kol Yema have a Melavile Marukva l'Shmuel. Marukva would be the one accompanying Shmuel. Accompanying meaning allowing Shmuel to walk ahead ad ushpizi until Shmuel came to where he was staying. But Yom Echad, one day, Marukva got lost in his thoughts. Why? Because Itrid Bedine, there was a din Torah. It was a complicated case. So Nebuch Marukva, listen to what the big thing that he did. Because he was so into his din Torah, he walked ahead of Shmuel. Didn't notice Shmuel is there. Shmuel got insulted. Oh. Hava Azal Shmuel Basrei. Now Shmuel was behind him. Kiyamata Lebeisei, when they came to the house of Shmuel, Amalei Loi Negalach. Is it not clear to you? You're confused about something. Lishli mimar betirke, can you please release me from you're upset at me? Shmuel was slighted. Shmuel felt Marukva was upset at him, that Shmuel is not giving him kavod. He reacted in a way where Marukva felt that Shmuel was bothered. Yoda the nekat milsa, bedate, yeah. So what did he do? Nahag nizifusa benafshi chadyema. The Av Beis Din, the great Marukva was such a giant. We learned that Marukva is the one who would go every day. He would put money on the people's doors. Remember that story? And no one should see who's giving them money. And then when they opened, he once went with his wife. His wife walked him to shul, and the recipient wanted to know who's the benefactor. They opened the door, and he didn't want to shame the benefactor, so him and his wife went running. The benefactor went running after them. They ran into a public oven that was fire. They were willing to burn to death for that person not to be ashamed. That's the whole chazal, that throw yourself in a furnace of fire and don't shame someone else in public. That's this maruk. Anyways, so he behaved b'nezuf. That's just a rai that it's a one day self-imposed ban. L'chaim. All right, weiter. Next story. So there was a woman that have a yosfa b'shvilo. She was sitting on a path, and have a spashtakara. She was sitting in a way where one of her legs were extended, meaning that if you're walking on the path, you couldn't walk properly. You have to walk around. And she was menifa chush lo'i. She was busy. Ich weiß was. She was winnowing barley seeds. She was involved in her work. And v'hava cholaf azal tzuma midrabanan. A yeshiva bacha was walking by, but v'loi ikano mikame. She did not free up the path, so he needed to walk around. Omar, and he said, "Kamo chatzifa yitza." How chutzpahdik is that woman? She heard that statement. She said, "Oy gavalt, maybe he put me into a ban. Like, what now? What's for me?" So she came in front of Rav Nachman, Amallah, and she wanted to know if a yeshiva bacher was upset at me. Am I in some sort of ban? Omri is laughing. So Rav Nachman says, did he use the word shamta or nidoi? Mishamat shamta mipumesho. She said no. All I heard was that he was upset. He said, "Oy, how chutzpahdik." So Armalah, well, if that's what he said, then zehil nohigin nezivusa chad yom benafsheich. Again, a raya that nezifa means a one day. If we're going to apply this today, guys,
Is it an honor system? Like everybody decides, like, all right, I think I offended that guy, so I'm going to put myself.
No, you have to know who that guy is. But if that guy is someone whom you respect and they feel slighted, then if you would live in the times of Chazal, then you would quarantine for the day. Okay, let's go by there. Because if that will be our standard, let's just move on to quarantining. Nezutra Bar Tuvia have a kapasik sidra kamei Rav Yehuda. He was learning psukim. Kimot alai psukim. When he came to the pasuk in Shmuel Beis, and it says ve'ela divrei David o achrayim. This is a big klal, my friends. The words divrei, Rashi says, means nevuah. Now, there are many levels in nevuah. David HaMelech is filled neviim, right? Tehillim. That's called Ruach HaKodesh. These are the last. Divrei David implies that there were two big prophecies of David, and the ones that we're reading now are the last prophecy. We want to know which ones prior was considered on the level of nevuah. So Amalei, it says. No, Zutra was in front of Rav Yehuda. He's chapping an eye. He says, if it says these are the last words of the last prophetic words, is the charaya that they were the first prophetic words. Rishonim Maininu. So which ones from all of the words that we quote from David HaMelech, which ones are in the level of divrei? Where do you have the words divrei? You have to know all of the psukim in your mind. So Ushasak v'loy amalei v'loy midi. Hadar amalei. So he asked him the question again. So a student asked the teacher a question twice. Again, achroinim echaldik rishonim maihi. So Rav Yehuda got upset. Amalei my daitach. I didn't answer the first time, which means I don't know the answer. So why are you asking again? What are you trying to tell me? That since I don't know this scripture, that's it, I'm out? You don't respect me anymore? That my daitach to lo yada perusha da haikra, just because I don't know, is lav gavra rabuhu. No, it's when you ask a question once, and the person doesn't answer, why are you asking again? Like you're rubbing it in, because I don't know, I don't know the psukim. So the Talmud now, Yada Nekat, the Nekat Milsa B'datei. So Zutra Bar Tuvia felt, Rav Yehuda took it to heart. So here again, Nahag Nizifusa Benafshi Chad Yoimo. Okay, so when they quoted the story in the yeshiva, how did people react? They said, that's a good question, Taka. Now we have to know the answer. When it's based on this principle that Divrei is like a higher level of Nevuah. David HaMelech said many things, but it doesn't say Divrei. So Rav Yehuda didn't know the answer, but Chevra, what's the answer? So the Gemara says, Uda'asan Allah, now that we came to this, with the greatest respect to Rav Yehuda, Taka, when it says Achroinim, he's right. He implies that there are earlier words of prophecy. Rishonim Mahi. And the Gemara answers. It says, Vayidaber. Here, that's the word. Vayidaber David es divri hashir hazois b'yoyim hitzel Hashem oise mikaf kol oivav umikaf Shaul. So now that we're saying that David HaMelech, in praising God and singing the song that he was saved from Shaul, was connected to God on a level of nevuah. Now, connected to nevuah is a two-way street already. So there was a lot more here, I would say. So if it's nevuah, then there was something that he said, there was something that God said, and the Gemara now is on being megale what really happened then. David, Shira ato emena mapalto Shaul, you're singing because David Shaul HaMelech, who wanted to kill him, had a downfall. You're singing about Shaul. Ilmale ato Shaul b'hu David. If you would be Shaul and he would be David, ibadati kama David mipanav. Then David would fall, many Davids will fall in front of him. And Rashi writes something amazing. You have to know what the words mean. Rashi writes that the only difference between Shaul and David was mazel. Rashi, Shaul was born in one mazel. David was born in a different mazel. It was the mazel of David that stood for David. The failings of Shaul, you can argue, were not as great as the failings of David. Yet, Shaul HaMelech's kingdom came to an end. David HaMelech Yisrael Chai V'Kai. It's mazel. Mazel means it's beyond logic.
Is that everybody?
Well, to him, in other words, you're singing, don't sing. Singing, he's greater than you. That's what God told him. And Hainu D'Chsiv, and David HaMelech was so humble. That's the meaning of the Tehillim Shigoyin. The guys, Shigoyin, just to know, the Taich of Shigoyin, we learned this. Shigoyin is a musical instrument. But the Drasha is Shigoyin, who knows what Shigoyin means? An error. He was Moide. Shigoyin l'David asher shard l'Hashem. David HaMelech acknowledged that I made an error by the fact that I was singing regarding Cush ben Yemini. Who's Cush ben Yemini? Shaul. Why is Shaul called Cush? The Gemara here, we're going to go through it quickly, says that whenever in Tanakh you speak about a black person, it's a compliment. Every time it says Cushi, something special. That's the point. He acknowledged that I sung about the downfall of Shaul. That was my mistake. Because he was a Cushi.
I said Jonathan agrees.
Jonathan agrees. Jonathan is not Cushi enough. But good. Ella, ma Cushi mishuna ba'oidoi. Mishuna means unusual, but unusual in a complimentary way. Af Shaul mishuna b'maisav. Shaul was the greatest tzaddik. When it says regarding, again, second time today, Pashas Baha Aloischa, right, the Miriam and Aaron, Al Oidois Ha'isha HaKushis Ashalakach. Now, Tzipoira was not a Kushis. Tzipoira was looked like the same color of Jonathan, right? She came from the Middle East. She was brown. She wasn't black. So and Bachlal Kushis v'chi Kushis Shema v'aloi Tzipoida Shema Ella ma Kushis mishuna ba'oira af Tzipoida, she was a perfect tzaddikus. Kushis means something extraordinarily good. Af Tzipoida mishuna b'maisav kayetzav b'davar ha'toimer. Another proof where it says Vayishma Eved Melech HaKushi. Now this is in reference to Tzidkiyahu Kishmoi Kenu. And we're speaking that the Eved was an Eved of the Kushi king. That was the uniqueness of that moment. That even though we were not worthy then, but the king was a big tzaddik. Another proof. This is already one of the Haftoidas. Haloi kivenei kushim atuli b'nei Yisrael or Beis Yisrael. Are we a kushim? Are we v'chi kushim shaman? V'haloi Yisrael shaman. Ella makushi meshuna ba'oiroi. The Yidden are meshunim b'maseim mikol ha'umais. Now let's chop another line. Amar Shmuel bar Nachmani Amar Rabbi Yonasan. Let's continue. Now that we are beginning to unpackage the Nevuah and Shmuel Beis, the Divrei Achronim, what does it say over there? So there's the pshat that we have to learn nachfor, and we're going to go straight into the drasha. Naum David ben Yishai. These are the words of David ben Yishai. Naum doesn't mean prophecy. Divrei means, but Naum means the verter. Naum hagever, who's hukamol. What does hukamol mean? Naum David ben Yishai. Shehekim ula shel tshuva. Ula means from toy eles. Ula means that David showed us the benefit of tshuva. That what? Amar. How did he show that God forgave him for Bathsheba? Omar, Elokei Yisrael, God of Israel. Li diber tzu Yisrael. To me spoke the Rock of Israel. Who's the Rock of Israel? Moshe Ba'adam, the one who rules man. Tzadik Moshe Yiras Elikim. The righteous man rules through the fear of heaven. The righteous man, we begin that God is the ruler. Then we're speaking about that Tzadik is the ruler. How does that fit? Explain my Amar. Amar Abba Harchi Kamar. Harchi Kamar Elokei Yisrael. This is what God says. That Li Diber Tzur Yisrael, meaning God says, I rule man. Listen to these words. Then God asks, but who rules over me? And God answers the tzaddik. Ani Moshel Ba'adam, but umi Moshel bi. Tzaddik. Tzaddik means the one who fears God. And what does that mean? Sha'ani goizer. Gzeira, even if I make a decree that tzaddik has the power to be mevatalid. And that's referring to David HaMelech. And Chaval that we're this is so geschmack, but to be continued.